Muted again. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. Inter Miami completes a 3-1 victory that sends the Herons into the knockout rounds of the League's Cup. No red card is going to stop them. No Lionel Messi injury is going to stop them. The game just ended about 20 seconds ago. I'm your host, Scotty. This is my co-host, Saur. This is the Raw Reaction, which is all about getting your thoughts on that game. It is emotion, it is raw, and I think there's a lot to talk about. Saur, my friend, how are you feeling after that game?
That was the most scintillating 90 minutes of football that Inter Miami has played without Lionel Messi. That was brilliant. First half, slightly iffy. I think we struggled a little bit to make anything happen in the final third. Javier Mascherano, credit where it's due, coached a blinder in that second half and completely changed the perception of the game. Tadeo Allende, my goodness, could have had at least a hat trick. His touch makes me think he's wearing clown shoes. Honestly, it's so bad. But this could have ended 5-6-7. This could have easily been a lot more. Inter Miami was above and beyond the better side in the second half. And I'm glad the first goal didn't deter us and didn't ruin the party.
Yeah, I actually thought it was a very even game, if not even slightly favoring Pumas after 45 minutes. And in the second half, it wasn't even a competition. Inter Miami was so much better. Created chances were really good through the midfield and defensively. And the catalyst was taking Chelo Wegon out, putting Ian Frey in at right back, moving Rodrigo de Paul out to that right side of the midfield, and moving Tadeo Allende up top. And so you had sort of a strike partnership. Instead of having a striker and a number 10, it was a strike partnership with Allende and Luis Suarez. And they just whooped them. It was awesome. And I want to start by giving Javier Mascherano a ton of credit because he made the difference in this game. Without Messi, with things not going your way, I didn't think Suarez was particularly good in that first half, and he's your star player. I didn't think Rodrigo de Paul was particularly good in that first half. He's your other star player and engine right now. And he made a difference that not only got those two to have a really good second half that carried their game, but the entire team played incredibly well. So start by saying, Javier Mascherano, this was an excellent game plan, potentially the best in-game coaching decision I've seen from him all season. And so considering how often we criticize his decisions, I just wanted to start by saying that was awesome. And I think he won us the game more than anyone else.
Yeah, and I think it starts from the starting 11 that he picked. Picking Yannick Bright was an absolute stroke of genius over Redondo. And honestly, you couldn't have blamed him if you wanted to pick Redondo because he's gone with Redondo the last few weeks since Yannick Bright has been out. And in a big game like this, putting Yannick Bright in the starting 11 was a great decision. I think for the first half, Yannick Bright was the only player that was playing. He was above and beyond. I was watching his SofaScore stats just go up and up and up, and he was rated like 7.4 by the end of the first half. I think everyone in and around him was very sloppy. The defense, not great. But you said it. Javier Mascherano's in-game management, his decision-making, bringing on Ian Frey. I don't know whether that was a forced decision because Chelo Wegon was injured or what it was, but that changed the nature of the game completely. And the dominance that Inter Miami showed in that second half was not a coincidence. It was because he put in players who always play on the front foot and who always take the game to the opposition. And after that, we didn't look back.
Well, not just that. The other thing is, your weakness in this game defensively was that space between Chelo and Gonzalo Lujan. I know that's not where the goal came. The goal came between Lujan and Falcone, but that's where they kept attacking, and it was because that space was grabbing so much of the attention of Lujan that it opened the space for the goal. That was the weakness, and they exposed it like 3 or 4 times. You put Ian Frey in there, not a weakness anymore. Like just like that. I also thought it allowed them to press higher. You mentioned being on the front foot, but I think having Rodrigo de Paul on that side and Ian Frey and Tadeo Allende up top, it allowed them to press higher when the ball went to that side of the field. I thought that kind of threw Pumas' midfield off, and it kind of changed the dynamic in the midfield in a way that really helped Inter Miami. So a brilliant decision. I thought it was spectacular, and as Tunde says, Mascherano's best game of the season. Like, probably. I can't think of, like, nothing comes to mind above that, other than maybe the LAFC comeback.
Yeah, he had a couple of game state decisions that he had to make. That LAFC comeback was more Inter Miami pulling itself out of the
I think
quagmire by themselves. I think when it comes to in-game decision making, actually influencing the game for what it's worth, Javier Mascherano, I think, did a fantastic job. Credit to him, and it all starts from there. MVP for me.
Yeah.
Well, MVC.
I completely agree. I thought, I mean, he changed. It was an even game, and then he makes one change, or I guess one substitution and two changes. And
I didn't think it was that even. I thought Inter Miami was offensively a lot more potent, but Pumas had a game plan and they wanted to attack us on the transition. We thought they wouldn't be a transition team as much, but they tried and they got the goal really well. But Inter Miami came out on top eventually and changed the structure. Allende needs to fix himself because I thought Fafa Pico was a lot more dynamic and involved when he came on. And Allende was just he did score, or was that offside?
Yeah, he scores.
He did score. Yeah, so hopefully that.
Well, we'll get to him. We'll get to him as the chat takes us. But I think the biggest picture, the headline is not Allende. The headline is we made halftime substitutions that made us far and away the better team. And point of order, Inter Miami without Lionel Messi just went and played a Liga MX team. Not a great Liga MX team, but a mid-table Liga MX team. And they just outplayed them when they had the right structure and setup. And when they didn't have the right structure and setup, they played what I thought was a pretty even game. You may disagree, but certainly compared to the second half, it was a tight game compared to the second half. Cynical says, let's go. The Devonist says, fantastic second half. Got what we needed. Okay, let's stop here for a second. Inter Miami goes through to the Leagues Cup quarterfinals, and we're not sure Messi will be back for the quarterfinal, which would be next Wednesday, maybe next Tuesday. It'll be midweek next week. If he's not, if we play like we did in the second half, we could still win that, and it will be at Chase Stadium, so we'll have home field advantage. That's definitely a winnable game. And then you go to the semifinal, final, you'll have Lionel Messi back, and all of a sudden, the path to win the tournament is right there for you.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because we did the same for CONCACAF Champions Cup.
So let's congratulate them for getting to the next round, because it wasn't easy. This wasn't a setup that was going to be easy to get through like the last couple of years. They had to earn this.
And they played really well. I think it wasn't a smash and grab. It wasn't we had to grind the result. You predicted that we'd score at the end and try to win it. I thought Inter Miami dominated that second half and how. And I was right in my score prediction. So I just want to pat myself on the back for that.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I think I got all the scorers. Oh, no, I predicted Bright to score. Allende got that goal. But I said Rodrigo de Paul was going to score and Suarez was going to score. And yeah.
The first two games, they had goals in stoppage time. And so when we talk about how important those moments are, they're really fun when they happen. But if you don't follow them up later on, they become footnotes. And now I just want to stop and say, Chelo Weigand, despite the fact that he was him coming off the field was a huge factor in our success today, if it wasn't for him getting that goal in the first game, we're not here right now. Same thing with Jordi Alba and Rodrigo de Paul with the 92nd minute goal in game 2 to get the equalizer, and then everyone that made their penalties, including Rocco for getting the save. That gets us 2 points instead of 1. Because if we were still on 1 point right now, we'd be watching every other game with very few of the tiebreakers. Yeah, exactly. So I just want to go back to those moments and say they really did have a huge impact. And now we're out of the bizarre, funky part of the tournament. And it's just straight up you versus the guys in front of you.
It's straight tournament play.
Now it's like the competitive nature and all that stuff.
Every game is a final.
Everything's right in front of you. And the moments matter really a lot. The Devonist says, Bright was excellent. DePaul was excellent. But the lift Frey gave was perfect. I think you're a little higher on Bright's performance than I was, if I'm being honest. I thought he was a little sloppy in possession a couple times. And maybe that's just because he was really good defensively, but I already expect that. So maybe my standards for him have become too high. I thought Suarez and DePaul for the first 43 minutes worse than they were on Wednesday. But then in the second half, they were fantastic. So overall, really nice games. Suarez, who's gotten a ton of flack, is the man of the match with a goal and 2 assists. He also has another goal that's called off sides, but like the confidence to just fire, like it was a nice finish, even though he was off sides.
I disagree on Bright. I thought Bright was phenomenal in that first half. I think the best player on the pitch. He was doing so many things, and I hope when you rewatch that game you see the same things. But I thought he gave away the ball once, maybe, but he was everywhere, and Karaskia was nowhere to be seen, and that was because of Bright. Defensively, Bright was very sound, but more so than that, I thought he was really good offensively. And in so many times, he was just getting into very dangerous positions. He created the pre-assist for the goal, for the first goal. And that was a beautiful pass to Suarez as well. It wasn't an easy pass by any means. I thought he was the best player on the pitch for the first 45. And I agree, Suarez and Rodrigo de Paul weren't that good. And then in the second half, those two were the best players on the pitch. Just completely drove the game home and took over, and Rodrigo de Paul didn't even have to break a sweat. He did look tired by the end of it, so I'm glad he got 7 minutes of time or 3 minutes of time back. But overall, I thought that midfield worked only because of Brighton there.
SD, let's stop on Suarez for a second. El Pistolero, what a game. Listen, whatever you know, I agree with you. I didn't think he was particularly good for the first 40 minutes up until the assist. He had a goal and 2 assists. Like that's the type of huge impact that we needed from him. I was concerned that because the ball didn't hit the back of the net in penalties, it wouldn't translate. Now he hits the back of the net, and so I can feel good about him moving forward.
That was ballsy. That penalty, taking a Panenka after not scoring for 3 months is ballsy. So good for him.
That's
great pen.
That kid was taking his first ever start for the senior team, the goalkeeper for Pumas.
Yeah.
Tough situation to go up against Luis Suarez one-on-one in your first ever start. Cynical Tube says Elite Eight. We're going to the quarterfinals. We will find out about our opponent tomorrow night. The worst Inter Miami can be placed now is 3rd. If Seattle and Portland win, they will go ahead of Inter Miami. If they draw and get 2 points, it'll come down to tiebreakers, and I'm not sure how that would play out. So probably depending on how their games go, which means Inter Miami has a chance to be the number 1 team on the MLS side, but at worst 3rd, which means they're not going to play whoever finishes first on the Liga MX side, which is nice. And I will be honest, I haven't seen a Liga MX team in this tournament and thought to myself, that's really scary. You know, when we were in the Club World Cup, we talked about the difference between coming first and second because whoever came second had to play PSG. This isn't like that. I think whoever we play from this point on, Inter Miami can absolutely be the better team against and win that game. So I feel really good about the tournament right now. And Rocco's playing well, had another good performance. Javier Mascherano, I've never had more confidence in him than I do as of this moment. Ian Frey and Yannick Bright are back in the lineup. I love that. So I feel great about it. I feel great about this tournament right now.
It's fantastic. I would like to ask, if we get through the next round playing against Liga MX, then we can go up against MLS team, right? It
depends on if they win or not.
3rd round? Okay.
Because it'll be a Liga MX versus MLS team. So if the MLS team wins, then we could.
Yeah.
But it's not necessary.
Now it's like a straight bracket. No funky rules or anything.
Beto says, did Mascherano get body snatched? Did we give him enough credit yet? Because he deserves it.
I think he'll get the credit tomorrow when we do the post-game show. But absolutely, for anyone who's just tuned in, we mentioned at the start, this game was Javier Mascherano's best in terms of in-game coaching.
Steven says game opened up when Frey was on. Let's sit on that for a moment because it was a difference, but why was it so different? And I thought the midfield became much more combative when you put DePaul in it and you move Allende up to be sort of a guy who can play off Suarez. And then, as you mentioned at the beginning, being able to play on the front foot. And there was times early in that second half where they were pressing high. I thought it disoriented the opposition midfield, and it was great for Inter Miami. But what did you think was the difference?
I think that is definitely an element of it. The fact that Rodrigo de Paul and Ian Frey could now connect together on that side of the pitch. Rodrigo de Paul had more freedom to get involved in the build-up rather than the last pass. And it's also down to Ian Frey's general skill set. It's so much different from Chelo Wegan. Chelo has to take time on the ball. He can't find the acute angles to open up the field for him. And what Ian Frey does is his ability to carry the ball well, his ability to play in intricate spaces drives out defenders towards him. He takes away a lot of the opposition defenders with him, creating space in and around him. And the fact that he can play close touch with the players in and around him, he can find a nice acute pass that adds to the pressure. The defenders now have to be really adamant that they don't let Frey go free. And Ian Frey was making the runs that Allende was making in that first half. So the fact that we pushed up so much in our back line really helped open things up.
Yeah, I think actually it was more of an impact defensively because Frey was able to get so high up, but I think it's because he's confident in himself to get back if needed.
Yeah.
And Cello feels like he's not, and not necessarily for no reason. Anton says, so glad Allende and Suarez scored. Listen, if anyone on this team needed goals, it was those two. I will say Allende scored, and then he had a chance a couple minutes later to make it 2, and he didn't. So I don't know if that erases the goal. But, again, a guy who really needed a goal, and he is up to 12 or 13 goals on the season. Like, on the whole, he's still having a good year, even if today wasn't his best performance.
He's having a better year than Gresso, than Rojas, than Diego Gomez combined. So he's really putting in the work.
Certainly from a goal-scoring perspective. Gabriela says, play bright, you win. Simple. Frey's being amazing. Suarez was amazing and the man of the match. I'm going to rewatch the game, so I'll come back to you on Bright. That said,
the chat has a few things to say to you on Bright.
Okay, well, we'll get to them. Way better than anybody else. Like, even when I thought he was having like maybe a 6 out of 10 performance from him, the difference between Redondo and Kramaski and him is just like night and day. And so if you can find a way to get him on the field with Busquets and with DePaul and with Segovia, like that line across is really, really good. Hard to break down. I thought by moving DePaul to the right, it kind of took away some of the pressure and it made it more difficult for their defensive midfielder to sort of lock in on him. And it opened the space for him, and he became a much better player in the second half. So the fact that he can play out wide gives me a little bit of confidence we might see him there with Yannick Bright in the midfield moving forward.
And also, I feel like Yannick Bright has been deployed as a number 8 under Javier Mascherano, not as a number 6, because he's been playing like a box-to-box, really getting involved in the final third, passes, linking up play really well, moving, drifting out wide when needs to. There was just so much I saw from him that was very positive, and that too his first start in months. That for me was the stark difference, that he was just as confident, just as ready, taking on a mature role, not being deferent to the rest of the players around him. Playing with Rodrigo de Paul and Sergio Busquets, he's the one running the show in that first half, which for me shows the level of confidence he has in his abilities. And yes, sometimes it comes off, sometimes it doesn't. But the fact that he's willing to step up and not be afraid to take the ball, he doesn't hide. And that for me is a massive, massive attribute that's going to take him so far in this sport.
Yeah, Luis says, so many other teams are still alive. This format is crazy. Orlando City just jumped a couple teams with their 5-1 victory tonight. So they're still alive, unfortunately, in this tournament. But Inter Miami at the top of the table, and no need to worry about it. Paulo says it's Mache's best coach game all year. IDK says second half domination.
That is correct. Second half was very different from the first half, but also the first half we were creating opportunities, just not enough clinical chances. And that goal was beautiful. That goal in the first half that came off with Rodrigo de Paul, the construction of it was fantastic.
Brad says that second half was perfect. If we play like that for the rest of the season, we're absolutely winning everything. Guess who wasn't even on the field?
Lionel Messi.
So imagine if you played like that on the front foot, high up, a little bit of intermittent pressing, making sure your guys have space, disorienting the opposition midfield, and you also have Lionel Messi up there. Yeah, I agree. That's one of the things you'd like to see. Tunda says, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Three-man midfield, Bright over Redondo, Cello off for Frey, in-game adjustments, Fafa with decent minutes, rest Suarez and RDP in a match. The second half was just good decision after good decision after good decision for Javier Mascherano. I thought it was awesome. Giovanni says, let's talk about how Bright carried the whole team. There you go, Saur.
Oh, there's more. There's more, my friend.
Before anyone starts questioning, I still think I'm number one fan in the Yannick Bright fan club. Lewis says, Saur loves Suarez. How do you feel about Suarez now? Just generally. You feel confident in him, or was this a one-off?
Heron of the match for me, clearly. I'm confident that he needed some boost in his own ego, and that Panenka did it for me. I will say he still hasn't scored an open goal in a while from open play, but that'll come. He's just so influential in this way. I feel like sometimes maybe he plays better when Messi's off the pitch. Maybe that's a thesis that we can start looking into, but this game he was brilliant.
I think he does play better with Messi off the pitch in a Javier Mascherano system.
Yeah.
That's a conversation for another day. Anton says 2 more wins and they qualify for CONCACAF Champions Cup, right? That's true. First
Correct.
place, second place, and third place all qualify. So if they win their next game, they'll just have to win one of the final 2 for the League's Cup, and they will qualify for the CONCACAF Champions Cup, which will be a huge relief off, weight lifted off their shoulder. By the way, if anyone knows the Suarez celebration with the hat, I think it's a Delphi. If anyone knows what that is, please put it in the chat. I'd love to know. Mario says that midfield was world class, and then Bright exclamation point. Upcode says Yannick Bright makes 80,000.
Renew his contract and give him give him a Lamborghini and everything he wants.
I was talking about this on the after party last game. He needs a new contract. But he also needs to be like a starter, like locked in starter. Like he deserves that. Yeah. And I am very curious in the offseason if those conversations lead to him getting like the big move or getting the big new contract with Inter Miami. If I was Inter Miami, I would like sell Lujan and give him the Lujan contract. Pepto says, what's this first sub at halftime we've seen?
No.
That's not in his repertoire. And
but he's done it before.
Has he?
I think when it was forced or something. I also think this was forced, by the way. Cello may have picked up a knock or something. I don't trust him to make a halftime substitution.
No, I'm giving him credit for it. I'm not taking that away from him. It was a brilliant decision. And listen, what I will say is I think Cello might be like carrying an injury. And so maybe he's been waiting until Ian Frey's been healthy. So maybe he did want to give Ian Frey, like Frey was ready for 45 minutes and he wanted to give Cello time off. But no, I'm giving him credit for the brilliant change in our formation. Bizret says, who else was worried Suarez would miss that penalty? The chip, the audacity of Suarez. Though, once he scored the goal on the one that got called off for offsides, the confidence, the celebration, like from that point on, I had.
No, I knew he was going to score the penalty.
Lewis says the best midfield trio in the MLS. They have to work to get this trio together.
Yeah.
Like they have to force that together, I think.
It's actually so simple. You just put Messi out wide, put the 3-man midfield with these 3, and then in game, if you want to switch it up, play Rodrigo de Paul on the right and play Messi in the center. So as simple as that.
Yeah, I don't know if Messi can play as like a right midfielder though. So you'd have to switch it to like.
No, play a 4-3-3, not a 4-4-2.
I'm like speechless because like I want to see that from Javier Mascherano, and maybe this weekend's actually a good time because we can talk about that later. Uh, okay. Taran says when Frey came on, I feel more confident than Cello.
He's just
Defensively,
got
he's
the
a huge upgrade
swag.
too.
Oh, he's so defensively, offensively, every way he's a huge upgrade. He's one of the best players on the pitch when Messi's not there. When Messi's there, he's still one of the best players on the pitch after Messi.
Yeah. Janet says happy and grateful for DePaul. Let's talk about Rodrigo DePaul because I thought he was spectacular last game. And I thought he was like meh for the first 40 minutes compared to what we saw in his first two performances.
Sloppy.
And so I was wondering, like, okay, is this he's played too many minutes too fast? He's tired. He's still getting used to the Miami Heat or humidity. But then he just turned it on the second half, and he was awesome. So I feel like there's no concerns about him going forward, other than
and I think he's a
I
difference
might bring him
maker.
off the bench. I might bring him off the bench.
He's a difference maker. Yeah, I think so. Next game, you should play Redondo and Bright in the middle. It's fine.
Lewis says Pumas missing Navas was a huge deal. What did you think of Pumas? Because I thought they were really good in the midfield.
Until they weren't.
In the first half. I thought their goalkeeper was actually pretty good for the circumstances. He had a big save on an Allende.
He had a big
where
save on a couple,
big.
Yeah.
So it's just tough because the onslaught came and there's nothing really he could do about it. But
they were fine. I don't think midfield was where their strongest suit was, actually. I thought Inter Miami handled that fairly well. They had a couple of good chances and they were getting in behind the Lujan and Weigand route very easily. Angulo had a couple of really good opportunities and he was running in behind, and their wingers were taking advantage as well. So for me, that was what concerned me more than their midfield. I thought Alaskia, I watched him and his highlights and he was so good. And now I watched him in this game and he was largely invisible, and they didn't have much in that midfield, if I'm being honest. I think it was more so the front line that was bothering us because they were going very direct. Yeah, the left wing.
Yeah, the left winger was a problem. I mean, their striker was just like, I don't think I heard his name one time.
Yeah,
their right winger,
I agree.
I don't think I heard his name, but their left winger was had some moments. Taviso says the way Segovia is playing, I feel like the next season he's going to be in Europe. For those that don't know, the way MLS roster rules work is if you sell a player for a profit, you can convert up to $3 million of it to allocation money, which is useful within the league. Inter Miami, one of the reasons they can do so much now and have so much flexibility is because they sold Diego Gomez and they got to convert all of that to allocation money. That's what they're going to do with Segovia in January. Like, he's so good that they're going to use that to their advantage, and he deserves to go play in La Liga. What do you think of Segovia tonight?
I thought he was really good. Second half, I think he stepped up as well. There was some intricate interplay between him, Alba, Rodrigo de Paul, Bright, and they were doing flicks and tricks in the middle after they were 3-1 up, and it looked really good. But overall, I thought he was tidy, not spectacular, but fine.
Darren says we need 3 more signings, center back, striker, and a winger. Lots of praise for Yannick Bright in the chat, so I will just point that out. Anton says Bright's hockey assist to Suarez and DePaul needs an award. So well placed. Pepto says Suarez is not a 9 anymore. I'm standing on that hill. There's a lot of ways to be an effective soccer player.
Absolutely.
Nick Smith says Allende is poor, finishing 1 of 30 chances. Give Fafa a chance. What do you think of Fafa in the second half? I mean, he had the one ball.
He brought in, yeah.
He had the one ball through to Kramaski. That set up like a perfect opportunity.
I also think he came on at the right time where he brought in energy and menace that the defenders from the Pumas team couldn't just sit on their hands and be like, okay, now that Allende's gone, we're not going to have anyone running behind, because he keeps them honest. And that in itself is a value add, especially in that second half when you need an outlet ball, and Fafa can be that. And I thought he did that very effectively.
Let's look at some of the other performances that we haven't talked about yet. Because I think I thought Maxi Falcone was pretty good in this game. I thought Rocco Rios Novo did everything he needed to. Jordi Alba was, especially in the second half, really nice. I don't know. Is there anyone else that you really wanted to highlight? Busquets was like outstanding.
I thought Busquets was amazing.
I think Cello and
Alba
Lujan,
was really good.
I think Chell and Lujan was like a real weakness defensively.
I think they were the poorest performers. Not
Like
by a lot. Like they weren't bad, but you could tell they weren't the same quality as the rest of the squad. Like they stand out in not in a good way.
Should we talk about that first goal for Pumas? Because, listen, at the time it looked like it might end our tournament. The left winger, Ruvalcaba for Pumas, he kind of occupies a space centrally, cuts in, is kind of sitting on the hip of Yannick Bright, and then he makes a darting run in between the two center backs. They gave too much space. I think some of the earlier pressure that Pumas was putting in the gap between Lujan and Cello was sort of forcing Lujan out to the right to cover for it, but then it opened up space in between the center backs. I'd want to rewatch it before I really
I need
place
to
any blame,
rewatch
but
it. Yeah. I think a little
nice
bit of
play by
blame on
Pedro
Yannick
Vita.
Bright, maybe a little bit on the centre backs. I'll have to rewatch it, but it was a really good ball that came in and a good run in behind.
IDK says, I love the fact that the substitutions, the Ian Frey sub came at halftime as opposed to waiting 10 to 20 minutes. He also gave Segovia, an extra 15 minutes of game time.
He brought off Suarez. Never seen that before.
Especially in a 2-goal game, right? That could be anybody's ball game at that point.
Exactly.
Javier Mascherano's mine.
No, we'd already scored 3. Oh no, yeah,
it was a
that's what you
2-goal
meant.
game, yeah.
That's what you meant. Yeah.
Anton says we're still underperforming our XG. So different from last year.
Interesting. Yeah.
Upcode says our second half team should be our starting 11. Next Wednesday, if Messi's unhealthy, I think I'd still rather see Noah Allen in the starting 11. If Ustari's healthy, I'd rather see Ustari. But no, actually, Rocco's fine for this tournament. Nick Smith says the quarterfinals in 2 weeks, not next week. Is that true?
I'll have to check the schedule. I think next we're playing Orlando on Saturday.
We play
Or
Orlando
Sunday.
City on Saturday.
Sunday.
Let me look that up, and I'll let you.
We look there. We'll
talk
play
about
them Sunday.
Talk about whatever topic you want.
I want to talk about Rocco Rios Noble because I don't think he had much to do in this game. And even the goal that he conceded wasn't necessarily his fault, could not have done much. But overall, I thought he was very, very good, very clean. I think he's come into his own. The sense of confidence with which he's playing is good to see. And the fact that he's a third choice keeper, good for him because nobody expected him to do that well.
I just looked it up. The quarterfinals are in 2 weeks, so Inter Miami will not play a game next week, which not on my radar. I'm definitely gonna have to look at our own schedule for that. The semifinals and finals are going to be like a midweek and then a weekend. So Inter Miami might have.
And
to
we're playing
reschedule
Orlando
some
on
of those
Sunday,
games.
right?
This weekend, yes. Tunde says Suarez continues to show that he works better without Messi. They both work better with runners, but when they both play, that's one less runner and less energy in the team.
I'm trying to think.
I think it's a Mascherano thing, honestly. Like, I think both of them need guys around them to play well. And if that's not going to be the case, they kind of just play off each other, and then Messi ends up getting the spotlight. And it is tough for Suarez, who, let's be fair, is not as good of a player as Lionel Messi.
It's very simple. Suarez is no longer a traditional striker. If he wants to get involved in the game, it's not going to be him making runs off the ball constantly and then us eventually finding him 2 out of 10 times. He wants to now get involved by coming deep and being involved in the playmaking aspect of it. When Messi is on the pitch, Messi occupies a lot of the space that Suarez also likes to occupy. And that sometimes can become a bit convoluted, is not as flowy. When it works beautifully. But I think I agree that Suarez is no longer a traditional striker and he plays a lot better when Messi is not on the pitch. And it's also a thing about the system and the way we employ him when Messi's on the pitch. So a few different things that are at play in this situation. But it's interesting.
I'm not sure it's that simple. But and that's fine. Obviously, I have a different opinion of Luis Suarez this year than a lot of people. So that's okay. We can all, share our opinions and disagree. Saur, let's cut the raw reaction there with a final word, and then I'm going to stick on for the after party. So if you're listening on audio and you want more conversations about Inter Miami, you can check out the second half of this on YouTube. But, Saur, as we let you go, because you're out there saving the world, and you have to go to work tomorrow morning early and plant trees in the Saharan desert or whatever it is you do. Any final thoughts on this game?
Next round, bring it on, baby. Leagues Cup tournament. This is where we thrive the best. Feels like we're going to get far in this tournament. I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to predict anything. Fantastic game. It wasn't a smash and grab. It wasn't Inter Miami trying to stay afloat and eventually scraping a win. This was Inter Miami playing gorgeous, scintillating, attacking football and dominating their opponent and proving that they're worth their money. Bring on the opponents in the next round. We go far.
The quarterfinals in 2 weeks, I think Messi plays for that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
They play Orlando City this weekend. Then they get next week off. They play LA Galaxy at home the following weekend. And then in the following midweek, it'll be the quarterfinal. I think Messi will miss these next 2 games. The Galaxy, I'll remind you, really not a good team this year. And so I think Messi might just be ready for that final game, that next game of the Leagues Cup. Okay, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sharing. Stick around if you want, and I'll keep chatting, and we can check out the rest of the scores. But for now, thank you. This was the Real Reaction. Have a wonderful night. See you guys next time. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this, and have a wonderful day. Okay guys, welcome to the Raw Reaction After Party. I tried this last weekend, and I thought it was a lot of fun to just kind of casually chat with you guys. And also, there's so many chats, and I always feel bad that we don't get to them. So I thought I would stick around and just keep having the conversation. So you're more than welcome to stay. And if you get some thoughts that you want me to talk about, throw them in the chat, and I will get to all of them because I like hanging out with you guys. It's a lot of fun. Natalia says, tonight we can sleep early and sleep well, I might add. Solid Rock says, no, Bright was way better. And Upcode says, wrong, Scotty. Bright was insane on defense, and he had a hockey assist on the RDP goal. Well, listen, guys, here's what I will say. If you've listened to this on audio, we have like a whole minute sort of preface. And if you watch it on YouTube, we try and run the sort of disclaimer for 45 seconds. We watched the game as fans the first time, and then we rewatch the game and try and really like have a keen eye on a lot of different things that sometimes we get caught up in the moment. So what I will always say is that I feel much better about my opinions the second time I watched them. I thought Yannick Bright had a couple sloppy moments in possession, a couple passes that were to no one. But I agree he was really good defensively, and I think I'm at the point with Yannick Bright where it's like I expect him to be good defensively. And so if he has turnovers, I sort of ding that against him, but it's not because he was poor. I just thought he was like 80%, 90% of what he usually is. But again, I will rewatch the game, and I will keep a close eye on Yannick Bright. Nick Smith says, I'm with Saur. Bright was excellent. Solid Rock says, Bright was the monster we need. Bright was amazing, says Gabriella. He helped with the first goal and was amazing defensively. Upcode says, Scotty going to get cooked on his Bright take right now. Louis says, who's got the over on Scotty eating his words on Bright after the rewatch? Okay, I hear you loud and clear. That's I hear your opinions, and again, I will keep a close eye on him on the rewatch. Cynical says, Bright is the difference. Gabriella says, Bright was the most definitely amazing. Very well. Bizraz says, Bright played Pumas out of the park. I mean, this is just great. What I will say is, I remember last year, Saur and I talking about Yannick Bright and thinking, man, we got to get him in the lineup. We got to get him in the lineup. We had like a 3-5-2 at the beginning of last season, and it was so easy to run through the midfield. And everyone was talking about how the defense was bad, and they were blaming Drake and everything. But the truth was, the midfield was just wide open. And it was Gressel, and it was Busquets, and it was Diego Gomez for most of it. But with Gressel and Busquets in the midfield together, it was just very hard to play effectively defensively. And as Yannick Bright started to get involved in the team, you could just see it was a huge difference. They had Gregory, for those that don't remember. He was on the team up until sort of deadline day. They had to sell him because they couldn't fit him into the roster structure. And they didn't really have a defensive midfielder other than the kid they drafted out of the super draft that probably no one ever thought of as like a potential impact player. And by the time he became like a real part of the team, like if you took him off, we would complain about it because he was so effective. So listen, Yannick Bright came on the show last year. We talked to him for about half an hour. We went over some plays and watched a little bit of film with him. So I encourage you guys to go check out that video if you want to see more from him. He's my favorite player on the team, no doubt about it. Giovanni says, I'm scared some other team is going to steal Bright. Listen, I don't know what he wants to do with his best player. I'm sorry. I don't know what he wants to do with his career. But if he is interested in staying in Inter Miami long term, I think they should give him like a 5-year contract at, $800 to $1 million a year. Like, I think this player's 23 and you can have him until he's 28, 29 and just lock him down, and not at like, $4 million a year, but like a nice TAM deal. Like, I think Inter Miami should absolutely try and get that done. And if he wants to go he wants to go live in Italy. If he wants to go play in the Serie A or whatever, you work to make that happen. And maybe you do that. Give me another season. We'll sell him. We'll sell you next January or whatever. But he's phenomenal. Really, he is. I think he's one of the best defensive midfielders in the league. Anonymous says, I like Bright, Busquets, and DePaul as a 6, 8, and 10. I will say, I think there's a way you can have a Segovia, Bright, DePaul midfield that's more athletic and defensively sound, but it won't be as good in possession if you take Busquets out. And so if we can get this trio in the midfield consistently, it would be phenomenal. Really, you would talk about having the best midfield in the league. What I will say is Javier Mascherano has been very committed to this midfield four. He's not wanted to play with a midfield three for I don't know if he's ever played with the midfield three. Even at the beginning of the season, it was sort of Messi that was playing that number 10 role with two wingers, and it was really a midfield two. So I think we still got to switch up the formation to get the best out of our players. And listen, Javier Mascherano is making the best decisions he's made all year, so maybe that's coming. Mitch says beating 3 Mexican teams should prove we can win CCC. We can just bottle it versus a team like Vancouver. Yes. Inter Miami would have won the CONCACAF Champions Cup if they had better game plans against Vancouver. I actually have no doubt about that. They would have hosted Cruz Azul in the final. It would have been at Chase Stadium, and they would have won that game. So it's really frustrating and a tremendous lost opportunity. And by the way, guess who was our defensive midfielder in that game? Not Yannick Bright. He was sitting on the bench. It was Federico Redondo. So he's a phenomenon, and our coach chose to take him off the bench while the other team scored 5 goals. Upcoach says Obando is a hologram. I don't think he was on the bench today either. He's been dealing with an injury. I am curious to see what's going to happen with him. It wouldn't shock me if he doesn't play another minute all season, which is tough. If Suarez is actually deciding mentally he's going to retire at the end of the season, I think he deserves to go out as he wants to, but it's like that means he's going to play as much as he can. He's going to start every game. So I hope he plays like he did today. I also thought he was really good on Saturday night. So if he plays like that, I think we're all okay with it. But listen, we all know he's had some underwhelming performances this season. But that said, I don't think we're going to see Obando again this year, if I'm being honest. And Ash says, I hope Obando and Santi both get minutes over the rest of the season. Maybe this weekend. Next weekend is a chance for that. They play the Galaxy, who's not a particularly good team, although I think they're getting Ricky Puig back. They have some speed over the top, but if you wanted a chance to rest some of your attacking players, because their defense isn't particularly impressive, that could be an opportunity. I think you're going to have to be really solid defensively, but through the midfield and going forward, I think there's an opportunity to rotate, especially ahead of the Leagues Cup quarterfinal where you have a chance to obviously win a trophy. Tunde says, I don't think the Panenka, he thinks the Panenka was a safe option. The keeper's not standing there. I agree with this. I don't think it, I thought Suarez knows he's going up against a keeper, making his first ever start. He knows that keeper is just going to dive as fast and hard and stretch as hard as he can to try and block one corner. There's no way he was going to anticipate a Panenka. Solid Rock says Benha didn't convert his chances. He did have, obviously, a golden opportunity, a one-on-one with the keeper. He tries to round the keeper, and if you don't have a pristine touch, that's like the wrong decision, I think, almost every time, in my opinion. If you're Messi, you can do it. If you're Suarez, you can do it. Obviously, the guys at the top level of the game can do it because they can take the ball one extra yard, and it only takes them another step to get there. But if you're in that moment, you just want to make sure you round the keeper. So often those guys take it too far, and then it takes 3 or 4 steps to go get back to the ball. And by the time they do that, the trailing defenders get back in place to be a threat defensively, and then you have to go through 3 players, and it becomes very tough. So I think just shooting through the goalkeeper is generally the best way to play that, unless you're like a top level player. And so in the Premier League and La Liga, it's maybe not the best way to do it, but in the MLS, if you're not like the DP, then oftentimes you should just shoot through the arms. Elmer Apple TV was just showing highlights of Bright. Saur's going to feel so good about all these comments. Tony says tiebreakers are number of wins and then goal differential. So if Seattle and or Portland get a point, they'll be ahead of Miami. Sure. I don't know. I'd have to look at the table. Portland does have a better goal differential, and so does Seattle. So, yeah, you're right. They would be ahead of Inter Miami if they get 1 point. And if they lose, they'll go behind. And by the way, Portland's winning 1-0 right now. Anton says Bright ran 6.6 miles and was everywhere on the field. Nader says Messi could be out for a month. If that was the case, he'll be gone for the rest of the tournament. He won't be out for a month. Or I would be surprised if he was out for a month. Libby says Price, man of the match. They just showed his heat. Pepto says, if Mascherano's turned a corner with this game, I will fully get behind him again. Anonymous, Mascherano 9 out of 10. Gel says Messi's definitely out for the Leagues Cup. I don't feel the same way, guys. But we'll see. Ash says maybe the coaching staff got to Mash. Maybe Mascherano finally felt the freedom to do what he wanted in that second half. At halftime, he was like, if we don't win this trophy, I'm going to get fired, so I'm just going to do what I really want to do. And it was the right decision. I don't know. Antonio says, I have to say, I love the way this tournament kept me watching every single game because every single game had huge implications. This is one of the things I want to talk to with Saur about, and we'll do it on tomorrow's show or on the post-game recap. But there was clearly potential in this tournament for your team, whoever you were a fan of, to get screwed over by goal differential, or you had to play a tougher schedule, or you got to play on day 1 instead of day 3, whatever it was. And now that Inter Miami didn't get screwed by it, I think it was tremendous amount of fun. I watched more games in the Leagues Cup group stage this year, or phase 1, than I ever did the first 2 years in terms of other teams, because that all mattered. And even now, Portland's up 1-0 in a game that impacts Inter Miami. Pepper says maybe Messi got Scaloni to slap Mascherano upside the head. Maybe Messi went in at halftime and was like, now that I'm watching the game from the sideline, I can see what's going wrong, and I need you to make some differences, some changes. Bizrad, the switch from Allende and RDP unlocked the defense. I agree. I thought that was a big part of it. But beyond that, the right side of our team, when it's been Cello, Allende, and Lujan, has been so poor, and this has been that way for weeks. And by putting RDP out there and by putting Ian Frey in, you like turn it from a weakness to a strength. Then all of a sudden the opposition doesn't really know where they're supposed to go. They tried to go down Frey's sideline a couple times, and he stole the ball, forced them out wide, and they couldn't do anything. So all of a sudden, the game plan, we're going to attack this one part of the pitch, it's gone. And then, like, they didn't know what to do from there. I thought part of the early parts of the second half, they did some high pressing, which I thought confused the Pumas midfield. They weren't really able to play through it well. And it kind of destabilized them, and all of a sudden the tide turns, momentum goes, and then they got carried away with it. Tony says he would prefer 6 teams going through. A lot of teams got eliminated yesterday with 2 days to go. I think there's a conversation to be had about ways to improve the Leagues Cup for next year, but I think overall I like this format, especially now that Inter Miami got through. Tony says, I think Frey pushed up so high it allowed DePaul to still be part of the midfield in that inner right channel, and we still had 2 forwards, a mobile one and a creative one. We just overloaded them. Exactly. Henry says, finally some good subs and tactics from Mascherano. I agree. SD says, Ian, F, and Frey and Bright are a total game changer. This is something that... How do I put this? Inter Miami replaced their entire brass in the offseason, right? Tata Martino and his whole coaching staff left, but also Chris Henderson and the sporting team. They all left. So you get a new sporting director and a new coach and a new coaching staff, with Javier Morales being the only sort of assistant coach that stayed on. If they had trusted Yannick Bright and Ian Frey, Noah Allen a little bit more in the offseason, I think we could have made some roster decisions we could have made different roster decisions that may have had a better effect on this team. I think they looked at last year and decided we're not good enough at X, Y, and Z, and they just brought players that Javier Mascherano wanted at X, Y, and Z. And I didn't think they were strategic enough about how they played that, but it is what it is. Lerner says, I agree with Saur on Bright's performance the first half. I was surprised how slow DePaul was playing and a couple bad passes that first half. Jordy Bright, DePaul, Suarez on fire in that second half. Totally agree. Mario says, I don't need to see Redondo anymore unless Busi is hurt or suspended. So they think this is an interesting question. Next season, they're going to have a DP slot, and let's assume Suarez isn't back. Should they use the DP slot on a striker? And I've thought about this a lot, because I don't think there's like a specific striker that makes a ton of sense because of a connection to Messi. Maybe there is, but it's not like a guy that just pops off the head. I'd really much rather see them get a left winger and then use a U22 spot on the striker. And I think that U22 spot comes from Redondo. So part of Yannick Bright's next contract probably means we're going to move on from Federico Redondo, which I don't think it's been like a total failure at all, but obviously not nearly the type of success that we've gotten from Telasco Segovia or Diego Gomez or even Toto Aviles. Upcode says Redondo should never see the field while Bright is available. Unless he plays with Yannick Bright. I agree with that. Never is a strong word, but he shouldn't start. He shouldn't be starting over Yannick Bright because of talent or anything like that. There was a point early in the season when the two of them were sort of rotating in that spot next to Busquets, and it was nonsensical. And maybe you can sort of justify it if it felt like we had an easy game, then a hard game, then an easy game, then a hard game. But when he put Redondo in for the 2 CONCACAF Champions Cup final games against Vancouver, that was just like, it lost the plot type of thing. Solid Rock says Masha said he can't play 90 minutes. I have not forgotten that situation, and we'll come back to that at the end of the season when we talk about Javier Mascherano's season and if he gets they confirm he's going to be back the next year, or if they move on or whatever. That'll be, I think, something we come back to. Steven says, I think getting Frey and Bright, it also helps on set pieces with Frey's length and Bright's strength. You know what else? Yannick Bright, surprisingly, really good on defensive set pieces. He's one of the best players on Inter Miami with balls in the air. You don't necessarily see it when you just watch, but when you look at the statistics, he's exceptional. And so, even though Redondo's a couple inches taller than Yannick Bright, he is a huge difference maker in on set pieces, especially defensively. And then Ian Frey, compared to Achello Wagon, the size and the strength is significant. Luna says, Benham missed a great opportunity as well as Allende. Otherwise, it would have been 5-1. And if Suarez's golazo had counted, it would have been 6-1. We pressed. It was a great win. That second half was a real feel-good half. I hope that can take them. They can carry that through because however long Messi's out, he's not going to play this weekend. And feeling good about yourselves and your team and what you're capable of without your best player, like that's going to have an effect. Pepto says with Frey, we could actually win some 1v1s on that side. I think Tunde said it really well. Frey pushing up, he didn't have that dribble moment in this game, at least not off the top of my head, but he was just taking up really high spaces right out of halftime. And I think it took some of the defensive pressure away from Rodrigo de Paul and allowed him to sort of find that space in those right-sided channels that allowed him to be much more effective. And he was a much better player in the second half. And again, if you can get your stars playing well, you can unlock your whole team. Pepto says Mascherano starting Bright, subbing on Frey and Fafa, subbing off Suarez. This is better than the win. It gives hope. Lynn says I like this new format. I've looked at so many other teams because of it. Watching day 3 of phase 2 was so good when they all drew and lost on PKs. Yeah, it's a lot of fun because you get to have rooting interests in every other game. One thing I'll be interested in is what does the Liga MX side of the table look like, because Toluca right now is on top. They're doing pretty well. That's a pretty good team, actually. Tigres, I think, has a chance to go 3-0 in their games. But if you get a Puebla, if you get a Juarez, I guess you wouldn't get Puebla. If you get a Juarez, like that's not scary at all. Pepto says adjusting the midfield's beautiful. I so agree. Anton says Delphi is his daughter. Oh, that's great to hear. That really adds some context. That's awesome. Anonymous says that's Luis Suarez's daughter. She made that for him. Awesome. Henry says give credit to Boosie, guys. He controls the team so well. I thought he was excellent in this game. Excellent in this game. He is sometimes his impact on like the flow of games goes underrated, especially when you have something like you had in the second half where it just feels like everything's going right. But it's because of Busquets. If you look back on last game, Busquets came off in the 65th minute, right as we go back to 10v10. And we didn't look like we could take over the game anymore, even though it kind of felt like that throughout the first 60 minutes of the game, that if we could just get it back to even, Inter Miami would be fine. We took Busquets out, and we didn't look nearly as good. Oh, Nick Smith says it was just her birthday in terms of Suarez's daughter. One Man Show says, now to prepare for the playoffs, the midfield is key and adjusting the defense. We have plenty of goals. This team has so much talent that you can set up an absolutely dynamic midfield, a really strong defense, and a team that scores and creates the most goals of any team in the MLS. And we don't play that style on a regular basis, but it's in there. And if this game is the start of him starting to play around, and by him I mean Javier Mascherano, we could be in business. Pepto says RDP can play as a right mid. Tony says they'll have to rotate heavily for the Orlando game. Do you guys think they'll rotate heavily? I mean, it's not really Javier Mascherano's style. I can't imagine Suarez won't play. I can't imagine DePaul won't play. And they get the week off after that. I'd be surprised. Tony says their goalkeeper did pretty well for a backup. Not just a backup, but a kid who he's never played. I think that was his first ever start for Pumas, like the senior team. So I thought he played really well for the circumstances, especially on the road in another country. It's tough. Anonymous says Busquets is underrated. We won't appreciate him until he's gone. I agree. A relief for Messi that the midfield is clicking now with RDP, Boosie, and Bright. Listen, guys, I want to see that midfield again on Sunday or Saturday, whenever we play Orlando City, because it is so much better. and the potential is off the charts. So you give him a chance to build some chemistry. You make it a real 3-man midfield, or make it a 4-man midfield that allows DePaul and Segovia to be sort of inverted wide midfielders and cut in and create space. But in order to do that, you need the fullbacks to overlap and play high up the field. And we haven't always seen that. But if you start playing Ian Frey and Jordi Alba and giving them the freedom, it starts really to come together. Now you have a little bit of a problem defensively. You play your best defenders. Take Lujan out, play Noah Allen, play Toto Aviles. Let your most athletic players defend in one-on-one situations, and then let the rest of the team just dominate the other side of the field. I have a vision. I'm also potentially a crazy person, so it is what it is. Tunde says, I'm assuming this is about Carrasquilla. Saur says that that was because he was lost inside Bright's quite big pockets. Lewis says Segovia will be this year's Diego Gomez. Listen, guys, the day we bought Velasco Segovia, I said he was going to be the next Diego Gomez. And there was a couple, maybe a month or so, maybe 6 weeks in the first half of the season where he looked like he was being drained a little bit and his role was kind of unclear. We were asking him to be more of a wide forward than a wide midfielder. But once he found his role, he's been awesome ever since. And in the Club World Cup, I thought he was their second best player aside from Lionel Messi. Lewis says, Fafa needs more minutes. Yeah, guys, I mean, I've said it every time. I think Fafa needs to start over Allende for at least a game. And maybe not even because of Fafa, but because of Allende. He just needs to have a reset. Be on the bench for 2 games and then come off the bench and have an impact off the bench. And all of a sudden you start building your confidence back. All those missed shots aren't 4 days ago. They end up becoming 3 weeks ago. And then you can kind of rebuild your confidence that way. I understand some athletes, you want to just play them through their bad form and they'll figure it out, you know, a shoot or shoot type of thing. But obviously that's not working for Allende, so they got to try something else. Stancy says, do you guys ever go to the games or not? Because your post games are always right after. I don't live in South Florida anymore. I moved out of South Florida for personal reasons. Actually, the week of Messi's first game against Cruz Azul. So the last game I went to in Chase Stadium was against Austin FC 2 or 3 weeks before Messi's arrival. I think it was Javier Morales' first win as assistant coach. But actually, maybe they drew that game, now that I think about it. I used to go to maybe like 3 games a year, but I haven't lived there anymore. And Saur lives in D.C., so he's not there either. That said, I did go to we both have gone to an away game or two since then. Seba says, Allende makes better runs than Fafa, even if he has the worst touch on the entire team. Part of me agrees with this. Like, I think overall Allende is a better player than Fafa Picault, but he's also in terrible form. Just terrible form. And the confidence is completely shot. And so you got to do something to try and spark him. More so for Allende's sake than Fafa Picault's sake, if I'm being honest. Like, I do think Allende's probably a better player, just raw talent-wise. Tunde says, would you trust Mascherano to rotate the 11? He's only ever done it once, and I believe he said he doesn't believe in heavy rotations. Yeah, it was that Dallas game. We looked great in the first half, and then he made some substitutions that cost us in the second half, if I remember correctly. Ian Frey was awesome in that game. Stancy says, Allende's first touch is worse than Kramaski. No, I think it's definitely worse than Kramaski. I don't think it's even close. Like, Kramaski is certainly below par compared to the rest of the team. But Allende is like in another tier at the bottom. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have, like, again, he's got 12 goals in the season. Like, he can be a useful player, but he's in terrible form right now. And so you got to figure out how to fix that. And you're not doing it by just running him out every game. Tony says the first goal was on Brighton Falcone, very similar to the first goal Vancouver scored against Miami in CCC, with Vite providing the assist. I'd have to look more at the eyes of Lujan and Falcone because there was a huge gap between them, and like, what happens to set that gap up? That's why I want to rewatch the situation. I agree. I think Bright probably has some responsibility on that moment, but I just want to rewatch it a couple times first. Pepto says Lujan was not worse than Falcone in his opinion. I disagree, but that's okay. Ernest says, I believe that the hat celebration by Suarez is a tribute to his late grandmother, who was influential in his life. Interesting. A lot of people thinking it's his daughter, but again, I don't know. Maybe his daughter is named after his grandmother. I don't know. Sarakti says that 11 with Messi and for Allende. Guys, I think we're overestimating that back line a little bit. Certainly the front six looked really good. You throw Ian Frey and Jordi Alba at fullback, it looks really good. There's a lot of improvement that can happen in the center back spot. Whether it's Noah Allen, whether it's Toto Aviles, whether it's a new center back, Mark Bartra or whatever, like you can improve that, I think. And then obviously, like, Rocco's been great the last couple games, but either Drake Calendar or Star is an improvement in goal. Nick Smith says 2 Wednesdays for quarterfinal on that next. HDS says Mascherano should rest the Barca veterans in non-important matches and rotate the squad. He needs to develop the bench more. I agree with you, but I will also say we are starting to get into crunch time of the season, right? Like, you can't really be dropping points if you want to win the Supporter Shield, which they do, or at least come first in the East, which they do. Obviously, you can't lose in the Leagues Cup, and then you get to the playoffs. So I think the opportunity to rest these guys and get some of the bench some minutes was back in April, and he didn't do it then. And so I think we're just going to ride it out this year. Josue says, I'm so over the moon. Since the preseason, I had faith in Rocco, unlike a lot of others who made fun of him, especially his height. Josue, I give you a lot of credit. He's been awesome for the last 3 games. I certainly never believed in him to be this player, and so kudos to you for seeing it all along. And he's been awesome the last couple of games. Like, I really mean that. Pepto says, imagine a pacey striker with Messi's passing and vision. Well, listen, Allende is a pacey striker, and I don't know if it would make much of a difference in this team, at least not right now. Tony says Suarez and Messi will work fine if you have an Allende in goal-scoring form and a hard-working midfield. Seba says Miami's playing either Tigres or Pachuca. I'd like to avoid Tigres if possible. I'd rather play Pachuca, but I'm fine either way, if I'm being honest with you. Neither of them is like a juggernaut that Inter Miami can't beat if they play well. Louis says, what a freaking game. Anton says, didn't know you did this last time. Yeah, guys, I like the casual back and forth. I think it's kind of fun. And I feel like when we do the raw reaction, we have like a standard that we want to sort of maintain. But I always feel bad when we don't get to the chat. And so an opportunity for me to get through all the chats and then also to sort of have like a casual conversation with you guys, I really like. And maybe it's just because I like listening to the sound of my own voice. That was a lie. I hate the sound of my own voice, but I do like talking with you guys. Nick Smith says, hell of a game. Made my week for sure. Yeah, that second half was actually a lot of fun. Luis says Portland's up right now. They may end up in first, but that was a couple minutes ago. They're still up 1-0 though, as far as I can tell. Hash says Yannick Bright's standards are high in our eyes. I think that's my point, is that he's defensively, I expect him to be like one of the best defensive midfielders in the league. And so now that he's gotten to that level, I am going to ding him for a couple poor passes, just like I would ding Messi or DePaul for a couple poor passes or a couple poor moments, or Segovia, because my standards for them are be a star every game. And that may seem unfair, but I think they've earned the right to have that standard on a regular basis. Tunde says, does anyone fear that Miami might lose one of Bright, Frey, or Allen in a bid to get their roster compliance? However, they cut that. I fear it a little bit. All 3 of them need new contracts. No, Ian Frey's out of contract at the end of the season. Noah Allen, I think, has 1 year left, but That needs to be, he needs an extension. And Yannick Bright, man, obviously, with the price he's on right now, it's just, they have to do something about him. So I would like them, if I'm being honest, and this probably is more of an off-season conversation. I think they need to move on from guys like Cello and Lujan and Baltasar and some of those types of players. Like, instead of bringing in some young players from Argentina and trying to turn them into your sort of that second layer of your roster behind the stars, like, just trust the kids. Like, trust your guys that are here and are proving themselves. And give Frey that contract. And give Allen that contract. And give Yannick Bright that contract. Keep them here for the next 5 years. I will say, it wouldn't surprise me if no Allen wants to go. It wouldn't surprise me if any of them want to have a European adventure in their career. And, that'll be up to them, obviously, and their play. Vice City says Obando was literally in street clothes. He's done for the season. Stancy says Masha said Obando has a severe muscle imbalance and they're working to correct it. He can't progress until that's resolved. Stancy says, as a PT, I can tell you that any muscle imbalances will hamper your whole athletic career. That's absolutely true. I'm kind of surprised that he has that, because you would imagine in a professional club like Barcelona SC in Ecuador, they would have identified that when he was 14 and tried to sort of work on the stretching or muscle building that they needed to correct that. But that's how you get a lot of injuries. So, yeah, they absolutely need to correct that. Tunde says, LOL, probably Neymar. I think that this is just going to remain a dream, but I think there's a way you can get Denny Bouanga out of LAFC. And to get a pacey goal scorer on the left side opposite Messi, I think that would totally unlock the team. He takes your third DP spot. You know he's going to be a star at this level. He's 30, so you get him like at the end of his prime. By the time he's 32, 33, and he starts to lose a little bit of pace, like, this whole roster is going to start to sort of turn over. And so it's like the perfect timing for him in his career. And then you use your U21, U22 spot on a striker. That's what I would do, I think. But who knows? Maybe that whole situation in LAFC will get sort of rejuvenated now that Son's back and they're going to get a new coach and all that. So we'll see. Marina says, what did you think of Falcone's performance? I thought Falcone was good. I thought it was better than Lujan. I thought the real weakness was Lujan and Cello together. Like, they're just slow, and clearly they're like, other teams spot that and they attack them. And it's sort of gotten to the point where it's like, now it's on film. So the other teams are purposely targeting them. So they're getting put into positions that are bad for them more often. It's just a situation that can get out of hand. Henry says, guys, now that we're in the quarterfinals, do you think we should think of the supporter shield or just get into the playoffs and rest some players? I think you need to get into the semifinals first. Because listen, getting into the CONCACAF Champions Cup is a huge deal. And this tournament is a way you can do that. And so I think you got to keep trophy hunting, or you keep trying for both until you get into CONCACAF Champions Cup. And if you do that through the Leagues Cup, then you can start to ease back a little bit on the supporter shield if you want, depending on health, depending on rotation. And maybe that doesn't mean ease back. Maybe it just means rotate more. But again, we have some easy games, and that's the last 10 or so are relatively easy. There's some real opportunities where you can get some wins with the depth options on your team. So I think we'll see. Let's just win the Leagues Cup, and then we can have those conversations. Today says Alfonso's already getting more minutes at Atlanta than he got at Miami all year. Yeah, listen, Javier Mascherano clearly didn't want to go that deep into the roster, and Atlanta believes in him. I know people gave a lot of credit to Tata Martino for building the roster, and they think Chris Henderson was sort of sidelined for much of the Messi era, but he was absolutely in charge of the super draft picks. And clearly he brought Ryan Carmichael with him. He brought Leo Alfonso with him. He brought another guy or two from the Inter Miami Academy with him. And that means he was responsible for drafting Yannick Bright. So That was, I think, his last gift to Inter Miami was Yannick Bright's draft. Pepto says Mascherano's finally seeing Allende is not a winger. Let's ride this hope. Mascherano will rotate. JC says after a 3-0 loss, I think Miami will want to hit back. So I don't think there will be much rotation. It's a great point. The last time we played them at Chase Stadium, they beat us 3-0, and that was the darkest point of the season. Like if they had fired Javier Mascherano the next day, I think that would have been justified. But of course, Messi went and talked and spoke to the media, and the next game he hits that free kick late against Philadelphia, and the season hasn't been like it's been a much more positive ever since. So, like that was the darkest point. Anonymous says game on Sunday against Orlando is a big game. I doubt Mascherano doesn't play his best team possible. Yeah, going back to the supporter show conversation, like they need to stay in that for now. Definitely. Carlos says MLS. It is an interesting tournament because it makes you sort of root against all the other MLS teams. Tell me what you guys have thought about the difference between the two leagues, because it started out feeling like Liga MX might really dominate, and then MLS really swung back. I think it's been kind of even, but it looks like the MLS might have a few more overall points. But it'll be interesting to see what happens by the end of tomorrow night, because it's in the MLS, but I thought a lot of MLS teams looked good. And even though some of them, the Liga MX teams won a bunch of games, it didn't feel like they had many dominant performances, whereas the MLS had some true blowouts. That Cruz Azul Seattle game was wild. Carlos says Miami played really well tonight, especially in that second half. Pepto says Allende is not all that fast. Either way, we need someone better, and Miami's too quiet this transfer window. Two excellent or interesting points that I want to bring up. I totally disagree. I think Allende is an absolute burner. He has long legs, and so sometimes it looks like he's not moving as fast, but he's actually picking up ground. It's the curse of tall people, that their legs aren't moving as like the quick fibers and the muscles aren't moving as fast, but because they have that long stride, they're picking up ground really quickly. So it doesn't look as fast, but I think Allende is quite fast, if I'm being honest. And then the second part of that, it's too quiet in the transfer window. I agree with this, and I want to shout out Mike Longen from the Inter Miami show. He said there's a chance Inter Miami doesn't do anything. And we heard the rumors about Mark Bartra or Facundo Palici. Like, I think those things would be happening if they were going to happen. It wouldn't surprise me if Inter Miami approached those players and sort of said, we'd be interested in having you. And then it broke with the media. But then they sort of started completely lost my train of thought. That they kind of disappeared. And I think maybe what happened was Inter Miami realized those weren't feasible. And so it wouldn't surprise me if Inter Miami doesn't really have anything left. I think they would love to get a center back, but I agree with you. It's gotten very quiet, and I don't think that bodes well. Anonymous says, do you think Kramaski will end up in Europe? I do. I think European teams really like him. I think he wants to make sure he's ready. But I think when he decides, okay, it's time for me to go, which could be this winter, it could be next summer, whenever it is. Like, I think teams are going to come in 5, 6, 7, 8 million for him. I think European teams really like him. And, people, listen, in the first half of 2023, when he broke out as an 18-year-old, he was like one of our best players. And now I get it. We got Messi and we have all these superstars and he doesn't look as good by comparison, but he can play at this level as an 18, 19, 20-year-old. He's the star player for the U.S. youth national team, U20. He's going to go to the U20 World Cup with them and be their star player. Like, teams are going to see that and think for a young player, he is really, really talented. It's just Inter Miami fans, we saw what he was, and now we're comparing him to the super team. And, he's not quite as good. But, I think by global standards for a 20-year-old, he's a fantastic prospect. Seva says, if you ask Scotty, who's responsible for world hunger, he will tell you it's Lujan. I will just tell you it's Saur who's responsible for fixing world hunger. And I'll leave it at that. Carlos says he doesn't like Allende at all. Tunde says, Bouanga looks like a great and dangerous player every time I watch him. If he can recreate the Messi and Pedro partnership or Messi and Taylor 2023 partnership, that could be fantastic. Listen, the thing about Bouanga is he gives you the pace over the top, which unlocks that space between the defense and the midfield that Messi and Suarez love to operate in, or, thinking for next year, Messi loves to operate in. But he also gives you the goal danger that spreads out that back line, and he provides goals and assists. And he's always been the star player on his team without needing the ball over and over and over again. So he's like the perfect type of player to put opposite Messi. And you already know he's got the talent to be a star in this league. I think it would be a home run for Inter Miami. Luis says Lucho man of the match easily, and Yannick putting on an excellent performance. I agree. Luis Suarez man of the match. Again, I thought he was kind of just underwhelming in the first 45 minutes. Finishes that with the assist, which was excellent, but the second half he was awesome. Anonymous says, do you think LAFC is the best team in the West now with Son? No, I don't think Son's going to be that good. I don't think he's going to be that good. Let me clarify. I think he's going to be solid, and he's going to be worthy of a DP contract, but I don't think he's going to be like a league-changing type of player. I think Bouanga is going to remain their best player, if I'm being honest. Anonymous says, have you heard Jamie Vardy Inter Miami rumors? I haven't, and I will leave it at that. What I will say is Inter Miami has looked at a goalkeeper, has looked at center backs, and has looked at forwards, and I find it very difficult to figure out how they're going to add any to the roster, considering the current roster makeup. So, I don't know. Tunde says that Jamie Vardy's quick, I guess. Yeah, for everyone that wants a quick striker. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. An hour and 23 minutes. Thank you for staying. I really appreciate it. And hope you guys have a wonderful night. It was a great second half. Inter Miami on to the next round. And I think we can all sleep easy knowing that. Javier Mascherano, a great performance from him. The team, especially in the second half, came alive. Inter Miami goes out and beats Pumas and is now into the quarterfinals of the League's Cup. From now on, it's trophy time. Guys, thank you so much. We'll see you guys next time. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.